Welcome everyone to the Finance Committee meeting tonight. And if you would, Mr. Terry, may I ask you if you would give us an invocation?
Let's bow our heads. Father God, thank you for this day. Thank you for allowing us to come together for this meeting, Lord. Father God, I ask that you continue to bless us, continue, Lord, to help us, lead us, guide us, and direct us into making the right decisions, or the best decisions, Lord, for the children of the public schools of Robertson County. These are all things we ask in your holy name. Amen.
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 And just for the record, Mr. Smith, Mr. Terry, Mr. Vontae Leach, and Ms. Brenda Furby, they're all here and they're all members of the Finance Committee along with you.
Hey, appreciate that.
Yes, sir.
I see Mr. Gentry's here as well.
Mr. Gentry's here. Sorry, Ms. Gentry, you were here. I just didn't include you because of the Finance Committee. But we're glad you're here too.
Yeah, we appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Good to be here. Appreciate everybody showing up for this meeting. Maybe we won't be here real long. We'll try to, some of this stuff is just general information, but the main reason we're here is for the planning budget for first item of 21-22 planning budget. And we'll let Miss Erica start with that.
Good evening, Chairman Lowry, Chairman of Finance, Mr. Smith, Superintendent, and board members. Good evening. I emailed the planning budget, and we're going to combine planning budget and capital, kind of toggle between all of those. I emailed this out to everyone Friday. Pretty much since the session in 08, we don't get very much any details for our planning allocation. If you want to start by looking at the document, page 1 shows what our planning allocations are based on the current funding formulas compared to the year we're in for state funds. As you can see, our projected ADM for the year we're in was 21,307, and this is what DPI based our allotments on. And for next year, they're predicting a decline in that ADM to 20,961. So that has been the trend for our district over the last several years. A steady decrease due to the hurricanes and other reasons. These planning allotments will most definitely change. So far, we have the governor's version of the budget that has been submitted. We're waiting on the House and the Senate version. So we won't know what these numbers truly look like until we get a final budget for this year. So that's why this is very brief. And once that budget's passed, I'll present the operating budget in. Yes, sir.
Ms. Erica, and I'm asking this mainly for me, maybe it helps somebody else. Throughout this whole document, if I go to the first line there where it's got classroom teachers, and 001, you have an amount there was this past year, and then 21-22 is what you're planning for next year. And then the difference, and that's throughout this entire document.
That's correct.
So every one of these numbers more than likely will change at some time.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And I can answer any questions about the state allotments. Like I said, these will 100% change based on whatever version of the budget that we receive. The General Assembly adopts that. So the core of what we send to our county commissioners is the local planning budget, and that starts on page 2. So you can see from the changes presented there, not a lot of difference in our revenue allocations. Our IEA, or Indian Education budget, is projected to go down slightly. Again, that has to do with our decrease in projected ADM. Once everyone submits their IEA budget, and there's somebody or groups of people who don't submit a budget, they may reallocate funds. So that impact may not be that high for next year. We just don't know yet. We're projecting a little more in indirect costs. Child nutrition is being a part of the summer program this year, and the way they're operating has seen an increase in revenue. I presented those budget amendments at the last board meeting. So we think they'll be able to increase that indirect cost slightly. We don't charge them 100% just to keep the program fluid, but they have a really healthy fund balance, so that shouldn't be any problem there. And I do anticipate using a little fund balance out of local. We'll be fine with that because we're rebuilding that and have over the last few years, so it's a little over $3 million. I don't anticipate using that much, but not knowing exactly what the revenue is, I wanted to go higher than lower. And then the next few pages detail the budgets. As of right now, they have told us we don't know any projection for increases in salaries. They told us to project a 2% increase in retirement. So that is pretty much the only changes that have occurred in this budget so far.
And Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, Murphy.
Erica, back to page 2, concerning the ROTC. And I do know at one time, the commissioners in their meeting, national meeting, they had discussed about allocating more slots for the ROTC. Is that still in the budget planning, to your knowledge, from the governor?
I don't know about the governor's version of the budget. I don't tend to look at it until we at least get a consensus budget.
Okay, all right, thank you.
But we have the same number of positions, and one thing that happened in the year we're in, all the ROTC instructors were converted. Those that were 10 months were converted to 11 months, so we
Right.
an increase there. And those that are 12 remain 12.
Okay, great.
Of course, in local, you know, that's where we pay all of our service supplement, our maintenance costs, all of our board fees. We have several grants in our local budget. We have to cover, the Indian education budget is here. We have arts, technology, a little bit there, but the bulk of our budget comes from the maintenance line item. That is, almost half of the budget, a little over half.
How do you affect, Erica, the new charter school that they opened in Pembroke? What kind of effect do you think that'll have? I mean, I know you don't know the numbers, but
So I can project, I think that they were gonna have a capped enrollment of around 200 kids. And our per pupil cost is $47.64. So that would be about $9,500 a year. So right now, we're paying close to $500,000 overall to charter schools. So they continue to increase, and it is a hit to our budget. We not only pay for the ones that are in our district, we also pay charter costs to the 2 virtual schools, and we also pay to other surrounding counties that may have children. Overall, we pay for 1,003 kids in this current school year we're in that should be in our district and have elected to go to a charter.
So, Mr. Chairman, Ms. Erica, if the commissioners gave us a $2 million increase, for an example, in local, will we have to share that with the private and the?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Any increase in county appropriations has to be shared with the charter schools.
Okay.
Some auditors say that you can call it a special revenue, but the verdict is unclear on that. There hasn't been a final decision on whether or not. So the instructions we've received from our auditors is any increase in appropriations, you allocate their share to the charters.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Ms. Erica, you can tell me if you need to ask this now or later, what you and I talked with. This county appropriations, that's the amount from the commissioners, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, that's, and as it shows here, that's what we got the same the last 2 years,
Yes.
at least the last 2.
You asked me to provide that, and I printed it, but I didn't make copies for everybody.
Okay. My question with the needs-based grant, we haven't put the use yet because of actually being shovel-ready to go. But with that grant, we will lose our lottery funds, which is roughly 1.5 million
A year.
a year.
Yes, sir.
And my question, folks, had been, if we're going to lose that, and we have to provide 5 million if we start building
Yes, sir.
out of our funds, to ask the commissioners to replace at least that 1.5 million a year that we're losing from lottery. And if they do replace that, not to take away from this year, that 1.5 should be on top of this year. So is that something now that would go in at this time, or is that something would be done later? I know we're trying to wait on and see what FEMA will do.
Page 12 is actually what our additional request to the commissioners would be, and this is based on last year, so we're going to spend a lot of time on that list.
Okay, that's fine.
That's where we can add that request, and I'll update this sheet accordingly. But
Go ahead. Gotcha.
What is the $50,000 insurance settlement?
we never know from year to year if there's any property or any of our vehicles. That's where we have to record that money as revenue. So I just put a baseline of 50,000 for whatever may occur in the year.
And Ms. Erica, the funding that we're gonna be liking in the summer school program that we're not being funded for, is that gonna be included towards going to the commissioners also?
We're going to have ESSER funds that we're going to be able to use for summer school.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So we're moving forward to capital.
That where we at now?
Yes.
Okay.
So page 8 is the capital outlay budget.
We're going to capital outlay here. That's item 2 on the agenda.
And I'll have to toggle between the two because planning, the capital outlay is part of the planning, so that's why, so we'll go back to the rest of the planning once we finish with capital. So again, you can see the budget, current budget and the budget proposals for next year. There's a larger increase in appropriated fund balance, which we have in capital. I still included funds from lottery, even though we won't get a new allocation because we have a balance in that lottery, in those lottery funds. So that's not new money, that's what's in that budget there. And you'll see the areas where, on page 9 and 10, where we increased the budget. Based on the conversations we've had this year with roof replacement, we added some more funds there on page 9 at the top, and renovations and major repairs. Air conditioners, I think we're coming on the end phases of those, so I reduced the gymnasiums and the air conditioning projects and increased the Red Springs High School complex. I don't have the new numbers. I know that was rebid there, so that may need to be adjusted as well, depending on if that's the way the board wants to move forward with Red Springs and the Red Springs High athletic complex. I'm waiting to see what those final numbers will look like once it was rebid.
Yeah, just for information for the finance committee, we rebid, we went up there, we had that 550,000, 600, we met with those people from Anson, people that got the low bid, and, theoretically, it's not working, the whole concept's not working, piecemeal and everything, so what we have done is went back out and they rebidded the whole process again, get 3 bids, and the intention is to do it all, not piecemeal it again. If it comes, one time it came to like, she got 2 million, it might come to 2.5, it may come to about $3 million, but we won't be between right now and what they're already doing, prices have already gone up between 10 and 15%.
That's correct.
We'll be better off to address the whole complex, be done with it, move on, and then jump to another category item, whatever.
When you said the whole complex, just the softball field, the baseball field, the whole thing, or what are you talking about?
We do anticipate go ahead and we've done the tracks at Lowerton and St. Paul. We do anticipate going ahead and doing the track. We're not playing football. It'll be the 2 baseball fields, the big baseball field, girls softball field, and the track, and all that goes with that. It still will not be a football field. It'll be a total concept where we can move on, do the project and move on, because as y'all all know, everything's going up. I mean, talk about OSB boards, $34 a sheet. I know we're not using OSB, I'm just giving that as an example. It used to be $9 a sheet, it's $34 a sheet. Best thing to do is address it, do the whole complex and move on. And that's what Locklear and Lochner and them are doing, rebidding the whole process.
I think if we do have the funding, I think that would be a good idea also.
Yes, it's the funding of fund balance, and I'll say that's just a placeholder until we get more concrete numbers based on those bids.
And the truth is, it would cost as much to repair the track at
That's right.
Spring as to build a new one.
Oh, yeah.
So it's just, good planning to do that.
It makes more sense, for
So
sure.
you gotta take up the whole track.
Yeah.
And it's predicted that the North Carolina Building Code, with the cost of things, will not go down this year,
No.
and increase.
I just wanted to address that while I was there.
Sure. Let me add, just those that weren't there, part of that meeting that day at Red Springs with this company there's a lot of things that like needs to be done and put under the ground. As far as if it's water lines, if it's electrical lines, and that's part of where all this scout was, okay, we need to go ahead and do this now instead of coming here and doing something, then you gotta come back and you're gonna be on top of whatever needs to go underground.
Right.
And it was like in these different phases, if you go ahead and get it done, it's out of the way. Again, we don't have to come back and address it in here. And I add again, this has been a 20-plus year discussion. So for, those two fields we need to just get them done.
And if we were to wait until later on in the hurricane season, it would cost more because of the watershed act being so high. It would cost us more after that soil get to it.
And the big part of the goal was to be able to play there next year,
Right.
2022. And the gentleman that was there that would be responsible for sodding the field, he said, you need to have the grass and everything out. It needs to be on the ground in September.
September, that's correct.
If it's not, if you don't get it early enough where it establishes a root system, you go out there and play next spring and you'll basically ruin the field that you put down.
Right.
So it was trying to get all these things lined up where you could keep the project going.
I do see one error that I made here on the maintenance vehicles that I need to update. So it's showing as 50,000, it should be 250,000. I failed to include, so I know the board approved for the transportation department to get the record. And initially we thought that could come out of the transportation allotment, but we've got new information that says that cannot happen. It has to be a capital purchase. So I need to add that total in here, and I believe it was 187. So I'd round that up. So that total I will change to 250.
Where are you looking at, Eric?
On page 10, where it says maintenance vehicles, I need to change that from 50,000 to 250,000. I'll update that copy. And that would be the record that's already been approved for purchase. They are backlogged. They had to implement a new contract, a state contract for those purchases, and that's not in place yet. So hopefully, but within the next year, we'll get that process started. It could take 6 to 8 months to get it built. Page 11 is enterprise, and it's very, very simple. The Shining Stars and Prime Time. Again, even though Prime Time, that budget is there, we got nowhere near those funds this year because we haven't been running our Prime Time program. But we anticipate it to be back up and running hopefully within the next school year. So I just left the revenues around the same. And again, as I stated, I'm not sure the sustainability of, even though we've gotten the federal waivers approved through 2022 with the summer feeding, we're just going to have to see how that progresses into the next year when we move forward with more kids. We may see an even higher increase, but I kind of left it the same as this year. And those are enterprise funds, so they have to be self-sustaining and able to support themselves. So page 12 is where we're 12, and I'll explain 13 in a minute, is where we'll probably spend most of the meeting. Have those conversations about how do you want me to update this document. This document is, like I say, what we requested last year to our county commissioners. I did want to note, Mr. McElwain provided me some information, and I'm going to follow up with the county manager. The fee for Lumberton Junior High was updated on December of 2010. You'll see that number 4 where it says QZAD and Qualified School Construction Bond Annual Payment. We transferred ownership of Lumberton Junior in December of 2010, so we should be coming up on our 10-year period where those bonds have been paid for. So we can remove number 4 altogether from that document. We have paid everything that we should for those loans, and I say I'll follow up with the county manager because I'm assuming they'll want to transfer ownership of Lumberton Junior back to us
Very good.
at some point as well. And I can assume that we want to continue to request the amount for the teacher supplements. We don't get $985, $800, we get $930. Now, I continue to update the request based on the increase in the teacher salaries because that increases the amount that we have to pay. But it has been continued to be funded at $930,000. Now, where you see number 2, where it says the gap in state funding to pay custodian and substitute teachers and school office staff, Page 13 explains in detail what I mean about that. I know you guys feel like I'm a broken record. I always talk about substitute teachers, custodians, and office staff. You can see in 09-10, the 2009-2010 school year, our allocation in 03 from the state was $8.4 million. Our allocation now in 2021 is $5.8 million. So the state has not funded us at 100% since that year. And that continues to be a struggle for us. I also show in every year since the 13-14 school year how much money I've had to transfer from other state areas into this fund so it is not overspending. And it averages about $2.5 million. So that is why that request is on page 12. To ask the county to help us in that area because it's been unfunded or underfunded for so long.
Do you include this detail when you send it?
Yes, I do. But so far, that hasn't been funded. I guess, yes, sir.
So we haven't got that funding from the commissioners.
No, sir. The only thing on this page that we've received is the $930,000 for the 1% increase.
Has that been the last 2 years there?
And I do know previously, I know the two of you can remember, the commissioners requested that we do a detailed amount of that we need, and I know Miss Erica did that for them. So I don't know what we gotta do to try to get this money.
They increased it, we got the 1%, Erica, but just make sure I understand it, and the other board members and you, they decreased it, but they also took some other money away, correct?
So prior to them increasing our capital outlay, our county appropriations, they gave us a waiver, so to speak, on solid waste and water costs. That was about $363,000 a year. Once they increased our allocation by the 930, we started back having to pay the water and the sewer, solid waste costs. So that 363 had to become a part of our budget again.
So theoretically, we got 600, instead of 930, we got about.
The effect was around $600,000. Yes. So I guess we'll just go through it one by, oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Terry.
Is the 1% teacher supplement typical for our sister counties or districts around us? Is that a typical supplement
That's an
percentage?
additional. So we were paying 5 and now we pay 6. It's comparable to some, it's not as comparable to Cumberland. Cumberland, I think it's at least double digits.
Yeah.
I think it's comparable to Hope, maybe Bladen, some of the smaller counties around us, but it's not comparable to Cumberland. If you want me to just go one by one, you want to keep the.
Yeah, if you got any update, yeah, if you got anything to share about it. I know the school resource officer or school safety equipment or whatever, yeah.
So you want to keep the school safety, and that at one time entailed updating each front office with the panic button, so to speak, and the training necessary to go around with all of that. That's what that $2 million was for.
Okay.
That was in the top 3 because we wanted it sorted by needs. So those 3 things would be the immediate needs. And like I said, we can mark out QZAB and qualify school construction bond because we're at the end of life of those bonds. The 1.1 million is still a good number to put for having the SRO at each school, and we're going to go into more details about where we are with the SROs after we finish this. We had discussed adding another 4% on top of our supplement to make it a total of 10%, and that's what the cost would be. That's what the next number is, to make us more comparable with some of the other districts around. And the 6.3 million for new construction costs, we probably can replace that with the $5 million request or the $7.5 million lottery request, of 1.5 per year for the next 5 years. I can change that wording there.
Need to elaborate again you need to break it down that we're losing. You know, like Craig said, we need to show that.
Right, I'll put in detail what that means and and I'll put 1.5 billion to cover lottery because of the needs-based grant. I'll put all that detail in the document.
So number 7, did we have that on the list last year, 6.3?
Did. That all came about because of some political things that occurred with the building in Pembroke.
Building where?
Pembroke. One of the former commissioners was talking about buying it for that cost, so then it was said, well, if you're gonna spend that money on buying the building that's in Pembroke, then you should give the district the money.
Okay.
Y'all don't remember, okay,
I mean, I know what you're talking about, but,
Okay.
yeah, okay.
that's where that came from. So I'll replace that one. Is there anything else additional that we want to talk about adding to the request?
This is a request for the county commissioners, ladies and gentlemen. For y'all, I mean, we've asked for the last 2 years now, Erica.
Yes, sir.
It's good for us to have it on paper because you ever get to a litigation point and you get in front of some judges or whatever, and they say, well, you hadn't asked for anything. We pull out this sheet and say, we've asked for $12 million the last 4 or 5 years, and we have bones to stand on instead of just saying, well, we're wishing or we'd like to have or whatever. So is anything else that comes to anybody's mind that you feel compelled to ask for?
I mean, I want to ask for additional 5 million from the commissioners, and I know the justification is in our records right here. But one of the things that they kept telling us, remember, that they want to sit down to give us extra money. I would like for you and Mr. Craig to sit down with them and the superintendent if you have to see what all they're willing to give us. Because they were the one that brought that to us, remember?
Yeah, they talked about the consolidated schools, and we have consolidated some.
But we did the closure, they say even the closure, and we did.
That's what I'm talking about, yeah, closure, yeah. Yeah.
I mean, try the spirit and see if it's real, you know?
But Eric has put the 5 million, I mean, the 6.3, that covers the 5 into 1.
I was speaking, they were saying additional funding, remember?
Yeah. Anything else, anybody?
I'll update these sheets and have the new totals and everything.
Do you have a question?
So when we make the request to the county commissioners, it's essentially going to look kind of like this?
It look like this with the back page, and Erica will break down
Okay,
how she derived at these numbers.
and it'll have a breakdown of each category?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, okay, gotcha.
Okay.
Right. And I'd just add, Ms. Brenda, with what Ms. Brenda's saying, now, I'm sure us three would be glad to sit down with Ms. Erica and the commissioners and talk about this more in detail instead of just, you going there and presenting it.
Right.
Because a lot of what's on here, we've asked for years.
Yes.
And I'll go back to one of my pet ones is these SRO officers. I just think every school in this county needs an SRO officer on that campus.
Right.
Just their presence, we never know what effect it might have in a bad situation. And a lot of times it's not, we talk about active shooter or something like that, it's not that. It's the people that come to a school that might be upset about whatever. Just the presence of an officer could be very helpful in preventing a big problem. So we presented these for years, and that's basically to me what it's been, has been a presentation. So if we can come together and work out a meeting with whoever needs to be at that meeting, Ms. Erica, if you see them to start with, we'll be very glad to sit down and set up a time to go sit down and meet.
A question, when we submit this, to the commission and stuff, in the past, how much money did the commissioners give us money after we submitted this? Did they give, or they didn't give us enough? Did they give us any? Did it come close to any number?
All they've given us in the last few years is that,
The top number?
They gave us 930,000 of that.
that's all they've given us.
Okay, I just, all right.
And the good news is the commissioners are now reaching out to us for things, and that's a plus for us.
Better.
And I thank God for the working relationship that we have.
Okay.
I'll make those changes and I'll send out the updates to everybody, so we'll have the new draft at the meeting next week. is a segue into the SRO, conversation. Document that is in the section. So I included what we paid 17, 18 through 2021. And, 1920 was a little different because of the closures there at the end. They really didn't bill, so we didn't pay, but, you know, we've worked through that for this year, and we're not done yet with 2021. That's, through, I believe, we've paid through March, and those are the totals. We paid all of the costs for the SRO. So we pay their salary and all their benefits.
Let me ask you this, Ms. Eric, on this page, if everybody's looking at the SRO page, right there at the top where you got County of Robinson, 10, we got 1 vacant, Lumberton 6, and Town of Pembroke, Town of Red Springs, St. Paul's. So when you got 6 for Lumberton, you just said we pay for all of them. Is just, so tell me exactly how that works then. If you got 20 total, 23, even though they may be allocated to Lumberton or Red Springs, St. Paul's, we still pay for all of them.
That's correct. We pay all those, I broke down which municipality we pay at the top, and then I broke down how many officers are included for those payments. But we pay County of Robinson, Lumberton Police Department, Town of Pembroke, Town of Red Springs, Town of St. Paul's. Those are the municipalities that we pay.
Where's the dollar amount? Is that back, where's the dollar amount? That's
It's up at the top.
up at the top. So when the Town of Red Springs, Mr. Brandt, he sent us, I know he sent me a request, and I think Craig, did you get it, Dr. Williams? Requesting one more SRO. So how do we address that? I mean, do we,
I think we've addressed it, that we can include it in our 069 budget for next year.
to give them one more?
Yes, sir.
So will you reach out to them then?
Yes, I've sent him a letter already, so he knows.
Oh, you have? Okay, well, good.
But we haven't started paying it yet, which is why it's not reflected in this sheet.
I understand. I
We
understand.
have to hire, but we've given, yes.
Yeah.
And it would really be good, Mr. Chairman, if every town did have an SRO from that town instead of the sheriff department, because if they get a call, they have to leave and then things are substituted. But I know the town of Maxton was working on it. And I'm thankful for the sheriff department coming in and help us as often as they do, but I do think every town do need a SRO.
Yeah.
And Karen broke down the next few pages to show where all those SROs are located. And the very last page there shows where the SRO are there only for contacts and on an as-needed basis. 13 sites that don't have they only get an SRO as needed. Like, they don't make regular visits to those schools.
When you say as needed, I mean, who determines that? How do you do?
They call them when they have a need or emergency, or if they have a situation, they would call for a resource officer.
So depends on the locality of the, if it's in the county, they call the county, or in the city, they call the city, is that?
They have a certain officer that's assigned to their school, and they would call that officer.
13 has somebody already, they don't go there every day, but they have someone assigned.
Right. Right, like if I was at Piney Grove, I know which officer I'm gonna call if I have a situation.
However, if that officer is somewhere else doing something, that's why, I think it was you, Mr. Craig, that said every school have its own. That's why it's so important that if we could get every school to have its own. Because they gotta go where they're called. And those schools in the country, I don't really like schools in the country, but we have them in the country, and they're really left defenseless if something take place.
You're right, because that response time will vary, and that's the key, is the response time to that call. Yeah.
And I know there's a shortage of deputies also, because I've seen that, the request for that also, so.
You know, we had a safety grant 2 years back, or the year before and last year. And part of the conversations we had with the municipalities was, yes, we refund the cost of the officer, but there's other costs that they incur, the cost of a car, the training, the weapon, all of those other things that we don't reimburse for. So they're also trying to manage that within their budgets.
And isn't there, I know there used to be a gang prevention grant that they could have gotten officers with. I don't know if that grant is still out there now or not, but Dr. Lee was our grant writer at that time. I saw it when I went to a convention in California for drugs and gangs.
When Dr. Lee was here, we actually got a safety grant through federal programs, but it hasn't been here for at least 10 years, I'm thinking.
But is it still out there to you or not? Because that was federal.
I don't know.
Okay, I'll check into it. Thank you. Y'all can check into it, you know. Because it was good.
And this is just presented for information. We had it, but you know, we can't afford to place an officer at every school as it stands right now.
Yeah, we can't. Huh,
We could not
right,
with our current funds.
Right.
but we keep asking the county commission.
Sir.
Okay.
In the last sheet, we were asked to present the enrollment and show the schools that have less than 500 students. This enrollment is as of January the 12th. It does not include pre-K because typically, you know, we're not funded for pre-K, but this is absent of those pre-K numbers. And you'll see we have 17 locations, less than 500 students.
One reason to put this on the list, I just want the board members that are here and you put this in the packet that comes out? I mean, I know we got the 5 million and hoping to get some more money. We're still trying to get FEMA money. We've been working on that for forever. And they talk about there's gonna be a grant, Dr. Williams, are coming from Raleigh, I understand, a fund,
Bond, possibly a bond. It's possible bond,
bond, that we.
just rumors.
It passes, then we'll get so much money. But anyhow, the whole concept is to look at this, and as you're riding around, look at facilities, just like me living in Red Springs. I know Peterson is big enough, Dr. Williams, but it has some land over to the left, like if we wanted to theoretically move a school or add on and close a school, then, you know, if you go to Pembroke or Lumberton or St. Paul's, wherever, you just look and you see these numbers, especially the small numbers where you got some that's got 200 and stuff like that, or low threes. I mean, you know, we done good when we consolidate or close some of our schools. How many schools do we end up closing? 7, 6, 7? How many
Closed 4 and repurposed 1.
closed?
Closed South Robinson,
Closed the high school.
repurposed it to South Robinson Intermediate. We closed RB Dean, we closed Roland Middle. Somebody's gonna have to help me.
Green Grove and West Lumberton just closed.
RB Dean and West Lumberton,
And this school here,
and Hargrave.
so that's more than 4, isn't it?
But we didn't do them in the same year. West Lumberton was closed by the hurricane,
Right.
so, yes.
And have we had enough time, Erica, to see what kind of benefits that produces? Have we actually been able to get like a rough number of, you know?
Well, we have as far as it relates to staffing, but we're still paying the utilities at all of those buildings. So, I mean, I can run reports to show the difference in the cost, but we still are incurring those costs there. Because if we ever get to the point where we want to sell the building or have someone else use the facility, it needs to be kept.
I know we're renting one out, pretty much renting one out, as we all know, pretty much, but the overall, you know, you county commissioner, somebody say, well, you got, had 40-some buildings or whatever, and you cut it, I'm just trying to see what the overall savings is. If you keep all the power on everything, all your losses to employees, if you could just kind of get a general idea of what it might be saving. per year, whatever. Is that possible?
I can look at that and see, because too, you know, we didn't lose the students, we just put them in other places.
Right,
So let me see what I can come up with there.
okay. That's just for information. Be looking at it as you ride it around.
And Mr. Chairman,
Yes, ma'am.
Finance, one other thing that's hurting us as a district is because a lot of our land in Robertson County has been condemned because of the 2 hurricanes. And I know that the planning committee was talking about having a meeting at one time, Craig. And if we did, the construction, when I say planning, I'm speaking of construction, we gotta be looking ahead too for where we can find land at again. A
Sure.
lot of it has been condemned.
I know they met the other week, Craig and Dr. Williams and all, they met with that 5-year plan. There was a group there that you're familiar with, Dr. Williams, that said you could build an elementary school for a certain dollar amount. I don't know what the number was, or
Around 30 million, depending on that, but that 5-year plan, that really is a 10-year plan. It set a priority order in terms of renovation, building new schools. It has projected ADM for the buildings, so we would know. Eric, I think you told me today we have 3 or 4 buildings that's 250 plus.
Yes.
Right, so we have that type of information that we can make a decision, and then where to take an option on property if we had to.
yeah, that's just,
So we have that.
yeah. And also on the agenda, we had the custodian allotment. Sarah's working on that. We'll address that at another time. Talk about the positions, how many square foot. We'll address that. Another meeting.
And we've got other on there, so if there's anything else other that you'd like to add, Mrs. Terry asked me to add the AP travel there, and I'm a little off my game this week with everything going on. I failed to add that, I'm sorry.
What was it again?
So,
What was it?
assistant principal travel. In principal travel, AP travel, both have been, you know, there's been a lot of discussion. AP travel, I've been here 21 years. As far as I know, AP travel has always been $400 a year. $200 in November, $200 in June. The principal travel at merger was one rate. In 02, 03, there was a $100 increase. In 05, 06, it was increased by 25%, and there hasn't been a change to those allocations since then.
What is it?
It varies depending on the school. It's as low as $688 twice a year and as high as $1,063 twice a year. It depends on the size of the school, and the initial allocation, I was told, I've never seen it in print, was the school's location from the central office and the expectation of travel
Central office.
from the central office.
So it's 688.
88 is the low, and they get that twice a year, and the high is 1,063.
Ms. Erica, was any of that on the principal's travel? Was anything with high school, middle school, or elementary? Was there any?
That's factored into it too, but
Okay.
just like, I know Lumberton, for example, gets a lower amount because they're closer to us. All the other high schools get 1,063. So no other schools other than the high school get that total. Most of your elementaries get 688, and I'm drawing a blank on the middle, the other number. But it's not like a large range. There's only 3 totals. There's a 988, maybe 825, and 1,063.
And for
There's been a
AP,
lot of, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, you can go ahead.
There's been a lot of discussion, you know, especially from high school principals, middle school principals. They have athletics layered in to their duties, and our travel allotment doesn't really address athletics. It just pays everybody the same.
And Ms. Sarah, Mr. Chairman? Sarah, speaking on the athletics, where we had to go back and do additional funding for them because of the like of, if we're in the same state going to the next academic year concerning the athletics, is it included here to add additional fundings?
For the what now? I'm sorry.
Athletics.
Like in the allotment that we give them,
Uh-huh.
I did not increase the allotment that's in here. We do give them an athletic allotment. The middle schools.
I mean, as far as paying the officials,
500, and I believe the high schools get 6,000, some that effect.
as far as paying the officials,
Correct.
okay,
We approved that earlier this year.
right.
That may not continue for next year, but we did say that if we have to revisit that again, we'll bring that forward in
Good
the
enough, thank you.
I think part of the challenge with the APs on the high school side is that, with the North Carolina Athletic Association, you know, they could, you know, they're in charge of like what conference we end up being in for high schools, right? So they could end up putting, you know, us in the same conference with a school that's, you know, an hour and a half, 2 hours away. And with that travel being like a flat rate, it just, I think it presents some challenges. And I know that there may be an expectation that principals will take most of those away games, but, you know, that's not always the case. There's so many different, you know, athletic events and, you know, throughout the year. So I don't know, I don't know what the solution is. This was the issue that was brought to me. I don't know that, but I just feel like you know, I don't think the 200 twice a year is just not equitable, you know, for countywide.
I'm thankful that our AD.
I think 400 twice a year.
Sorry about that.
Is that correct, Gary?
No, it's
200.
$200.
200 twice a year.
400 on the year.
Yeah,
For APs.
Oh,
for
yeah.
APs.
That's something y'all could look at now.
$200 twice a year.
Okay. So 400 is the total.
Okay, I got the wrong one.
I had it wrong too.
Okay. Could, as just conversations, that's just something that Ms. Erica, Mr. Jerome, and just whoever you need to add on a committee down here could just look at these travel expenditures for principals and assistants. And just bring us back some information, recommendations that we could look at.
So Erica, let's start with surveying our surrounding,
Yes, sir.
to get a sense of that. So can I ask, Ms. Hunt, can you address Ms. Locklear's issue in terms of our conference and appeal process that helps us not to have to travel?
You know, originally, we had St. Paul's, Red Springs, and Fairmont. The Athletic Association had put them in a conference with Wallace, Roseville, Midway, and where they were going to have to travel some games 2 hours one way. But once we went through the appeal process, they cut down on some of the travel, so now those schools still have Clinton in there and Midway. And now what Mr. Terry is talking about is, yeah, we require administrators to be at ball games.
Right.
We've got an AP who has to travel from Red Springs to Clinton, or Red Springs to Midway and back. Yeah, $400 is not a whole lot of money for travel, especially they're having to pay for their own gas and wear and tear on their own vehicle.
And then, Mr. Chairman, also, Jerome, do you anticipate that we're going to have to support schools financially at the end of the year like we did mid-year? Revenue's not there.
Yeah, the High School Athletic Association, their plans right now, is once school starts back up in August, we'll be back on the regular athletic schedule.
So we don't pay mileage or anything. We have to set fee and that's it. We don't save it. We pay so much a mile.
We had discussed at one point, and it was just general conversations in various principals meetings. I don't believe we had the conversation with APs, for them to start doing a travel form and keeping up with their mileage, and we would reimburse them based on mileage, but that idea wasn't popular, because the way we do it when we don't ask for that, it's considered a payroll item. So it goes towards their retirement credit. So, and they don't have that extra added expense that they have to deal with of keeping up with their mileage. They didn't really seem favorable to that. And again, that's been several years and that was just kind of thrown out.
I will address it from years ago. They brought up an option of letting us keep mileage, when I was a principal. And I tried it for about a week and it just wasn't worth it.
Right.
Or as trying to keep up, making those little trips, and it was just easier to go to, here's a flat rate, this is what you're getting, and you don't have to keep up with mileage. Now, like I said, that's been years ago. Consensus might change now, but at one time, it was just easier to take the flat rate, and that's, I think, why we're there now.
And again, the last time it's been updated was the 2005, 2006 school year.
Go ahead, Brent.
And remember, Mr. Chairman, the reason that we went with the flat rate because there were certain individuals who turned in mileage, they didn't attend the game. Remember,
I'm sure some of that
Yeah.
I hate to say it, but I'm sure some of that, the flat rates
that was
probably,
one of the reasons that we went with flat rate.
but,
Rome had a question.
but
And you have to realize also, you know, some of these APs, they'll be on the road sometimes 3 nights a week. They may be at a volleyball game one night, a soccer game one night, and a football game the next night. So maybe on the road.
Right.
Because there are good sports outside of football, basketball, baseball. We've got swimming in some cases, soccer, tennis,
Wrestling,
wrestling, track,
soccer down.
so y'all would, bottom line is y'all will discuss it a little bit.
well, yes, yes.
Anything else?
No, sir, I don't have anything else.
Anything else anybody want to add at this point as far as finances go?
I may not have that by the meeting, but I'll have it.
May not have what?
I may not have the travel information.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
By the meeting.
We're not, nobody's pressing you. We know St. Paul's playing for the state championship.
I may be limited this week.
We sure hope they win. That's right. Anything else, anybody?
That it. You want me to mention that other, the courts and the, just for next
No, if you
year?
want to.
Right, just,
But let's get it.
do you have anything else?
Let's, Eric, if you will, I know when you and I talked, in the general fund, the other day when you and I talked, we got 16 million.
No. Not in general fund.
But what was that fund then?
So we've got the capital outlay. General fund is what I call local current expenses.
Okay.
That's Fund 2. We may have $3 million in there.
That's in low, say it again?
That's local current expense, Fund 2.
Okay. Okay.
So in capital outlay, we have 11 million, but we also have 5 million in lottery.
Capital, let me,
Where you got the 16 million from.
capital outlay, we got,
Outlay Fund 4, we have 11. But that also includes the 5 that we're holding in reserve for the match that's required for the needs.
that includes the
That
5.
includes that, that's in that. Yes,
So really there would be about 6.
yes.
We're holding that, okay.
But in the lotteries,
We've got, there's some projects for St. Paul's Middle that are pending, so we've got right at 5 million, but you know, lottery, you can't use lottery funds for anything athletically related.
I understand,
It has to be,
building.
buildings, school buildings. And we won't be getting any new lottery funds. So once we spend those funds for the next 5 years, unless the county decides to replace that, we won't get any new lottery money in that budget.
So what we'll need to do is determine at some point about the 5 million, if we're going to keep it or turn it back, Craig, like you said one time. If we don't foresee anything in the near future, then we need, so at some point we'll have to make a decision. If we make that decision, then that would free, will that free the lottery money back up?
That'll free up the 5 that's part of the 11.
Yeah.
Lottery, we couldn't,
But I'm saying when we get our money, at one point,
right, if we went ahead and turned and said we were going to give back the needs-based grant, they wouldn't withhold our funds anymore. They would start back allocating those lottery funds.
And,
go ahead, Craig.
and then answering part of what you said, Mr. Smith, in conversations, if we did come up and say, we're not using it, we're going to send it back, there were still questions with the gentleman I talked with about the funding. would they return what they've kept? Like right now, we know they've kept a year, which is 1.5. At that point, he couldn't answer that question. But again, we would start getting it back and we would never have to spend the 5 million. That's the reason, for me, it's urgent that FEMA tells us what they're going to do. Because if they're not gonna come in, then we need to decide what we're gonna do with this 15 million and not just be sitting here losing this money. So hopefully they will, I think that letter, the way I read it, it said maybe within a month or so, they would say something one way or the other. And then we could make a decision on this 15 million.
Go ahead and address those other things.
Yes, oh, well, the other things, we've talked about it, folks, and let me say, finance has done a lot this year with the roof repair and things that's went on. I think the finance and been able with Miss Erica and everything to do a lot of things. Other things we had discussed was the track repair, because we started that a couple of years ago and then got sidetracked with that. But we're still looking at tracks, and you tell me if I'm wrong, that hasn't been touched was Red Springs and Purnell Sweat and Fairmont. And then we know we got to go back and redo whatever at St. Paul's. And just throwing out figures that I've been given, you're looking at roughly 200,000 per track. Now, that's just a round figure for tracks.
Probably go higher.
It's probably higher than that. It might be 225, 250, whatever, but it's probably close to $1 million to take care of those 4 places. And then there was.
Theoretically, now, we're gonna take care of Red Springs. We're gonna take care of Red Springs with
The whole thing.
You got,
Yes, sir.
you got Purnell Sweat and you got Fairmont.
Right. And also, there was a study done in December. We had discussed tennis courts and never really, other than it's there. And our tennis courts are in bad shape. I was at Red Springs the other day, and they are playing. I don't see how. There is gaps in that court where when a ball hits that gap, there's no telling which way it's going. Purnell Sweat, they're not playing any home matches there. It's so bad. So the study was done in December, and it made recommendations on all the tennis courts in the county on what needs to be done there. And they did a ranking of that, of Red Springs High first, which that's going to be taken care of with the athletic stuff. Well, not necessarily that, but hopefully we'll be able to look at that. And Purnell Sweat, and then Fairmont and Lumberton, and then St. Paul's on the tennis courts. And I'm just saying these to where if we're looking at the monies there and we know what we're doing this year as quick as we can, I think we need to address these facilities here. Because I just don't think our kids should be playing on very inferior facilities compared to where they're going to other places. Our things should look or be better than anywhere they go. So these are some things I think we need to really look at as soon as we can to get to these. Based on, I know we got new bids coming in for Red Springs, so we'll see what we got to do there, and just to keep this in mind, to get to work on these.
So you have a report based on that?
I have the information here for the tennis court prices, and now I don't have the track prices. I think they might have that information, but I don't have any actual concrete numbers. But based on what had been told and looked at, you were 225,000. And we do have LL&J is checking the sites for what we call the athletic training facility rooms. On all 5 sites, they are still doing their surveying at the high schools to see where those facilities could be put. When we get to the point that we could start looking at those, they're looking at what's underground to see where they could be placed.
And Mr. Chairman, Lumberton Senior Auditorium is still down to be done, correct?
I mean, I know,
Yeah.
it was on the list we have, it's on, because it got a roof. I know it's one of the ones getting a roof. I don't know if they've done the roof.
Here, because that was a question asked of me this past week, that's all.
I know it's, the roof thing there was first to stop the leaks, and then I think you got the electrical part and you got seating situations there, but the roof was number 1, and I know it was on that original list to get the roof done.
Talking about the auditorium part.
The auditorium.
Yes, the auditorium.
Anything else?
Chairman?
Yeah.
The industrial contract service got the bid for Lumberton Senior Auditorium.
Okay.
Their low bid on that was $122,590. So
For the roof, for the roof.
for the roof and the we know 2 roofs, the one on the auditorium and the one on the canopy.
I think Ms. Fairby's is referring to
Electrical.
the overall renovation that was
Correct.
$1 million.
Correct.
Yeah, but I was just giving the number since that was let out, it's recently been done.
And the electrical in particular is what I was concerned
Oh,
with.
yeah.
Okay.
Anything else? All righty, we'll adjourn the meeting. Appreciate everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you.